I wanna be loved, not for who you think I am, not what you want me to be. Could you love me for me? Real love, with no strings attached. So, we're talking love here this afternoon, love in intimate relationships. And I don't care what kind of, what the nature of your relationship is. What I have found is that whether it's gay, straight, whatever, all relationships, when it comes to romance and sex, they have the same challenges. So we are going to be doing something very novel, we think, here on the Larry Chang Symposium. We're going to be introducing some couples, and they are going to be telling you about how they met and anything else they deem fit that you need to know. We have 4 couples, and at the end of the stories of each couple, we're going to take one question. Is that all right with you? So, our first couple is Jherane. What? Jherane and Jean-Pierre. Let's hear it.
Good evening, everyone. Now, before we begin, let us tell you all that we're extremely honored to be standing here making this presentation. We'd like to applaud JFlag, not only for the work that they've put into making this evening a success, but also the courage that they have in advocating year-round for the recognition of LGBT Jamaicans.
Okay, so a few weeks ago, a friend of ours had asked me if I was coming to the symposium. I told him yes, and I encouraged him to come because Jean-Pierre and I would be making a presentation. We'd be sharing our love story. He seemed puzzled at first. He was like, but you aren't gay? You two are a guy and a girl, how's that working? I decided not to answer, and after a few moments, he came to his eureka. Oh, he began, so they're gonna have a straight couple, a gay couple, a lesbian couple, trans, and he goes on, and I'm like, not quite. But I didn't bother to correct him and tell him that I wasn't necessarily straight. Partly because I was in a rush and I didn't want to drag on the conversation for much longer, but also, more importantly, because our relationship is something I haven't quite figured out how to label. I'd often wonder if my queerness was invisible or less valuable because of the relationship I had with someone of a different gender. Are my experiences as a pansexual woman less valid because I date someone of the opposite gender? I didn't quite have it all figured out yet, so I politely invited him to the symposium and tell him that I'd share what our experience is like.
All right, so this isn't a love at first sight story. It's not a butterflies in your stomach story. It's not a whirlwind romance. This script was not written by Hollywood. So, but the truth of the matter is, and I don't think she realized this until I wrote this in the Google Doc, that she makes my heart skip a beat quite often.
Our story is, as Jean-Pierre says, not one of the Hollywood script. It's rather one of support and partnership and an amazing and fulfilling love that I've never experienced before.
All right, so we started dating the way most people do nowadays. I slid into her DMs. But the truth is, we knew each other for quite a while from before. We have a few mutual friends, and we were usually debating online.
And in person at U Freshers Debate when I took home first place.
All right, so Jherane caught my eyes from the moment, she caught my eye from the moment I laid eyes on her. And I never thought she'd be interested in me. I told myself that our interests were too varied and that I wasn't refined enough. So I had every excuse in the book instead of just approaching her with a, psst, babes. Oh, God.
I didn't think he'd actually say that. I honestly wasn't interested in him at first. I mean, he was really attractive, but I didn't think we would mesh. so I didn't approach him. He seemed loud, impulsive, and he had that kind of charm that would make you roll your eyes, but all the ladies seemed to love it. While I, on the other hand, I couldn't care less about being charming. Yes, I can be quiet and an overthinker, but I always said what was on my mind, regardless or not whether you wanted to hear it.
So the first date. Our first date was perfect. Although I was worried for the whole day that she wouldn't like it.
We spent the entire day in Treasure Beach, which is my favorite place in the world. And it was the perfect setting for his charm to start working on me. I remember the first time he put his arms around my waist to pull me close. My inner rational thinking Jherane wanted to roll her eyes and tell him that I saw straight through it. But instead, I allowed him to hold me. I wanted to be held. I allowed myself to feel the butterflies that everybody talks about. I allowed myself to start falling in love. I remember being suspiciously happy, but I didn't want to overthink it. It was the date that I've always wanted, but I never thought would happen. That was the beginning, and I'm so happy that I allowed myself to start falling in love.
All right, so as Jherane said earlier, she's pansexual. And whether by accident or design, I never assumed she fit the label of heterosexual. So when the conversation came up, that was actually the label that sprung to my mind.
Hearing him say I figured after telling him that I was pansexual remains one of the most comforting moments in my life. His reassuring smile made me feel safe and loved. I wanted to tell him everything in that moment, things I had been afraid to say to anyone I've previously dated.
Now, sexual orientation has never been an issue for us. That, however, hasn't blinded me to the fact that there are those who believe cisgender, heterosexual attraction is the right and only way, and that there are people who express these beliefs in extremely violent and isolating ways. So when we're not together, I can't help but worry, because she's not only an advocate for LGBT rights, but also women's rights. And these, unfortunately, are two movements that don't get the support that they deserve here in Jamaica.
So before us, I never appreciated what it meant to fully accept my sexuality while being in a relationship. There was always this pressure to be either gay or straight, depending on who I was dating, as if a part of me was erased once I started dating someone. Something I'm truly thankful for in a relationship is the understanding of how complex and beautiful love can be. No matter how you love, or who you love, you should never feel limited.
Especially by your partner. Love is love.
If you know Jean-Pierre or myself, you know that we're always doing something, whether working, volunteering, or planning. And this didn't slow down when we started dating. In fact, I think we took on a lot more. At the beginning of our relationship, our understanding was that our professional goals came first. After a while, we soon learned that our individual goals can easily become shared, if not in wanting the same thing, but by supporting each other.
All right, and I think that we share is that we dislike asking for help or relying on other people. And that would have been, or that is sometimes our biggest challenge. Learning to not only trust each other with things that concern our relationship directly, but with all aspects of our lives. But for me, this openness and support has helped me to achieve more, like much more than I would have by trying to do it all by myself. Whether it's my business, stuff for work, or any project I'm working on, I know I can count on Jherane's full support.
He became more than just a romantic partner, but someone I could rely on for advice, support, encouragement, and just someone I could run to at the end of a long day. The security this relationship provides me has helped me work more towards my goals, knowing that I'm not alone. Outside of a relationship, I never expected our interests to overlap. So I thought that the work I do in advocacy and his work in advocacy would exist in their separate spaces, to be discussed but not necessarily work together. In actuality, Jean-Pierre has provided useful and supportive when working on many projects, if not by offering me some perspective I've never thought of before, but by creating a link to resources that I needed, or even volunteering to mobilize or implement the project I was working on. It's kind of silly how much I didn't want to involve him in my work life. It's always been as a fear that we'd burden our relationship. You know, that keep the work-life balance everyone talks about, keeping things separate. If anything, I think it's made our partnership a lot stronger.
All right, so it's interesting how we expected different areas of our lives to not impact our relationship. What's happened is that we've ended up working together. Highlights include the recently held Think Healthy, which is a mental health week for the UM campus, and me bouncing ideas off Jherane for a diversity and inclusion project I'm currently a part of.
Us being together has challenged many misconceptions we've had of relationships. It's easy to think that once you're in love, the relationship will come naturally. But it's something that we've learned to work on, and that takes time and energy. As individuals who both like being in control, we had to learn how to let go and let ourselves not only love, but be loved. Every day, Jean-Pierre brings lessons learned. And like all couples, we do disagree at times. Not as often as you'd think based on how stubborn we both are. But I trust him deeply enough to know that despite our disagreements, we always have each other's best interests at heart.
No relationship is without its challenges. Well, for me, I like to joke around, and I have friends who aren't as, I would say, progressive as I am. And I've had to realize that a lot of these things, a lot of these jokes that I might run with my friends, they may not see it as jokes and they may be problematic. So, and these things that we say may make Jherane feel uncomfortable. So what I've had to do is really adjust to our sensitivities and realize that not because I've gotten into that habit means that it's okay.
And I think it's a bit unfair the way that we are raised to expect relationships to work. To somehow know that just off instinct how to love. I think Disney has had that effect on us that once you're in love, the relationship will work and you live happily ever after. However, we've had to learn to make this relationship work. I can't just expect Jean-Pierre to accept me just being mean or being distant, because there are days I just don't feel like talking to people. And I just want to bury myself in work. But no matter who your partner is or how close you think you are, they can't read your minds. Love gives us many gifts, and sadly, telepathy isn't one of them.
But what's worked for our relationship is openness. So we talk about our plans. We talk about what we want. We talk about where we're going, individually, as a couple, and about how we're feeling. Anytime we've tried to do less than that, it just hasn't worked out.
The discussion of gender, sexuality, sexual orientation, and relationships in Jamaica is something we've had very frequently. And at the end of it, we all hope for Jamaica where no matter who you are or how you love, you'll be able to do so freely and have the support you want.
To learn some of the lessons that we have, to learn lessons of your own, to grow, to trust, to feel safe that no matter where you go or who you interact with, you will be accepted.
We weren't asked to present today because of how we choose to label ourselves, but instead because of how we see love and our belief that everyone should be free to love who they want and to love who they desire to love. Love is love. Whether you're heterosexual, trans, cis, queer, or you live without labels, love is love.
Come on!